Welcome to the official podcast of FOR ETERNIA.com. We have the power. I'm your host, AJ, and today's episode is titled The Gift That Keeps on Giving. A title referring to the classic 1987 live-action motion picture titled Masters of the Universe, starring Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella, that for the past 38 years continues to provide so much joy and excitement, not only to He-Man fans around the world, but to classic fantasy genre movie lovers as well. Something we suspect is its own gift that keeps on giving to the guest we have on today. Yes, joining us today, we have the legendary man that was at the helm of it all. He was the master behind the curtain, the director of the beloved Masters of the Universe 1987 film that we all know and love. You all know his name. We'd like to give a big welcome to the podcast to the great Gary Goddard. Gary, thanks so much for coming on.
Sure, glad to be here.
So Gary, can you believe that it's almost 38 years since Masters of the Universe, debuted in theaters?
Yeah, well, sadly I can remember every year, but here we are. It's good.
And I want to get into like a little in the beginning of your career, but I mean, are you surprised at all? Here we are 38 years almost later, and the interest and the popularity of this movie is at an all-time high. We are getting Masters of the Universe action figures that we've never got before. And does that surprise you at all?
Well, it's a pleasant surprise for sure. I mean, it does surprise me in the sense that when the movie opened, we didn't have a big opening. We had a decent opening weekend but in terms of promotion, Canon was really on its back at that point. I think I didn't even know at the time. Mattel was financing whatever marketing there was basically Mattel. So that was a little disappointing in the way that it opened. But in terms of the picture, I had faith in the picture, and I felt the audience was there. I knew from ultra fans of the toy line animated show that some people wouldn't like the fact that we came to Earth, but I'm sure you know the whole story. That just came with the package. When I was offered the picture, the script was written by David Odell, the original first draft, and Ed Pressman offered me the directing role, and I immediately raised the idea of spending more time on Eternia, because there was almost zero time on Eternia at that time, except for the ending. They had the ending that you all know with the American flag and all that. So my job, I felt, was to try and give the story a little weight, not just be another one of these kind of knockoff, toy to movie things, and try to give it whatever depth we could, and try to make it work for the live action film medium, and I had a great love of fantasy and epic adventure. I mean everything, my touchstone when I was a kid was Jason and the Argonauts, which
that's a great movie.
Yeah. And other movies like that. Of course, the whole Disney canon back then, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I mean everything. But I was equally interested in theater, because as a kid and in my teens, I did, Shakespeare, Moliere. I appeared as an actor in plays and things like that. And I'd studied all that. I'd studied the great playwrights, Eugene O'Neill, and theater and everything. Also film, though. I was fortunate to be a student of Alexander McKendrick's at Cal Arts the first couple of years of the film school. He did High Wind in Jamaica and Sweet Smell of Success, and a lot of great movies in his day. He was part of the old Eon films in London, The Man in the White Suit and all those great things. So, and then other than that, I grew up in high school. I discovered the Doc Savage books, and of course Tarzan and Hobbit and all the rest of Dune, high school and college. So my head was filled with fantasy and action adventure and all of those kinds of things. But also I had this other side to me, the theater side and the literate side and all that kind of, and so all that stuff's percolating in my head. So when I looked at Masters of the Universe and had to accept the fact that the premise is, because this movie is going to be done for the time 15 million, it was 17.8 million, I think, when we started the picture, actually. But the premise was, and Ed Pressman said, this is the premise, you have to go with it. It is, basically He-Man on Earth in present day. So, okay, so how do we make that work? But anyway, having said that, I guess it's a long-winded answer to your question. Yeah, we tried to make a really great movie against a lot of odds, and I was very happy with what we wound up with. And I can state as we go along some of the adventures along the way in getting that movie made, and trying to give it a kernel of integrity all along the way as well.
Don't worry, we love long answers here, and the deeper in the weeds, the better. But the trajectory kind of reminds me of, in a way, I know it's different genre, different situation, but like John Carpenter's The Thing didn't do well at all. It failed in the box office, but boy, did that grow in popularity year after year. And, they started becoming a cult following behind it, and now it's just beloved. And it kind of feels like it's, Masters of the Universe went the same path. All right. So you were mentioning the beginning of your career. So was that always the goal, to become a director? Because I know you dabbled in a lot of things, but so movie director was the goal.
Yes. Writing and directing. I did about 7 screenplays for various studios along the way that didn't get made. The famous screenwriter story. But I did screenplays. The first credited one was Tarzan the Ape Man with Bo Derek. That was Bo at the peak of her career, and that was a unique assignment because I could tell the whole story how it happened. But anyway, it happened. I met Bo, and then John liked my writing, and he wanted me to do a dialogue polish on the Tarzan movie. Bo was one of the biggest stars in the world at the time.
Was that after 10 with Dudley Moore?
It was right after 10. Her next film after 10 is Tarzan with MGM, with John Derek directing.
She was big then, yeah.
Yeah, so they met me on another project, and they liked my writing, and Bo meets with me and says, John likes your writing. He wants to know if you'd do a dialogue polish on Tarzan. Yeah, absolutely, because I was in the Writers Guild, but I hadn't yet, because I'd sold a few scripts to studios and producers, but they hadn't been made yet. But here was an in-production movie, Tarzan the Ape Man, MGM. And of course, I can't say I read all of the Tarzan books when I was young, but I read a lot of the Tarzan books and the Tarzan comics and all that stuff. So, and knew the movies pretty well. But so I met with John, do dialogue polish, and the short story is I did 80% of the dialogue polish. He loved what I was doing. I'd have meetings with him, and Oh, by the way, I want to give John credit one thing. He was ahead of his time. In the movie he wanted to make, he said, I wanted to make a movie. I went to MGM and I wanted to make a movie called Me, Jane. Interesting. He was before Wicked, before all these things. He had the idea, I'm going to take the point of view of, and I liked that idea. I thought, that's a great idea.
That is.
Then when they engaged me, the legal department, MGM, had to meet with me to tell me, look, here's the rights we have. We have the rights to remake Tarzan the Ape Man. We can't tell some new story that John wants to tell about Jane and blah, blah, blah. You have to follow the structure of the original Tarzan the Ape Man. And whatever you can do within that framework, fine. But if you veer too far, the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate can shut this movie down. So I was in this rock and a hard place. John wanted to, and I believed in his idea, and as much as we could within the framework. But you can't turn that particular structure into Jane's. You can tell it to some degree from her point of view, which is what we did. And so that was my assignment. But what happened was I was doing dialogue polish, and 80% into it, he said, we love what you're doing. We don't like what it's based on, which was a previous screenwriter that had worked on it. And so we want to engage you to do a complete rewrite, but we want you to travel with us next week to the Seychelles and be on the island there with us, and we'll work on it there. I was like 24, I think, or so. I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Let's go to the Seychelles Islands and write a screenplay. And the other funny thing is, when I got there, I was checking into my hotel because, the Writers Guild, you get certain rights. You have to have this kind of hotel. But when I get there, the desk person says, oh, yes, Mr. Goddard, Bo Derek wants to talk to you as soon as you get in. May we call her? I said, yeah, sure. oh, Gary, we're excited. We have a big 4-bedroom, house that looks over the ocean, and we want to offer you, because she can't demand it, because again, it's WGA rights. I have the right to have my own hotel room if I want. We want to invite you to come stay with John and I in our, mansion that we've leased for the thing. You'll have
Wow.
your own bedroom and da 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 da. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. That sounds, hello Hollywood. Let's go.
You know,
Uh,
you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You finish
no,
first.
but no, but that was so that happened, and I did my best to keep the Tarzan alive, but everything got changed because John was directing. Nothing against John, but budget, schedules, things like that, and I took the sequence. There's a couple sequences that I think I did a great job that are not in the movie, and one of them is where she gets her body painted. The way that I wrote the screenplay, the whole idea was I looked up Indians, I'm not, yeah, Indian elephant ceremonies, the burial ceremonies. You may have seen pictures of them where when the elephants die, they paint them with all these different colors. It's a very beautiful kind of art. And
Hmm.
so I decided to make this tribe have a tradition like that, and that and they already in the script was already the white goddess kind of suggestions by the natives and stuff like that. And so uh, when John wanted the scene where when she appears naked to these people. I said, okay, got it. But what I did was I took the fact that since that tribe treated the animals, the elephants, in this beautiful kind of way, that they did that to her. So the idea was the scene was described as she enters the room. She appears to be in a multicolored gown that is beautiful and blah, blah, blah. But as she walks closer to the camera, you realize she's naked. Her body has been painted in this kind of uh, beautiful way of swirls and stripes, all multicolored and stuff like that. Uh, and that scene, I had no idea how he had shot it till he invited me to a rough cut here back in Hollywood, much, much later. And there's all that white, I don't know if you ever saw it, but
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
they're just slopping. They took the paint idea, but they did that white, just slopping white paint all over and everything. I was just like, okay, well, I was envisioning, I had that picture of, Frank Frazetta. Have you ever seen the picture of the Frank Frazetta of that beautiful girl standing in the light, and you can see her figure, and she's lit dramatically, backlit and front lit, side lits, kind of, and her body wasn't painted, but it was almost from the light, it kind of almost looked the way he lit it,
Mm.
and that was my idea, this dramatic entrance, and that the audience wouldn't even know she's naked until she was about halfway to the camera, and then be like, whoa, this is like,
You know, you mentioned to me, the confines of the remake, and that brought me back to that James Bond movie called Never Say Never Again, where I believe a different studio remade Thunderball.
yeah, yeah,
And
because that one book, there was a different rights clearance in that book, and this one guy, that producer of that movie, had the rights to that book under some other contract, and
mm,
there was going to be a lawsuit between everybody. So the settlement was the Bond people, Eon, finally said, "Okay, you can make that movie. You can make that one movie. Go away." So yeah.
rights, the rights issues back in the day,
Oh
always.
yeah, by the way, my draft was every time that I did a draft, and I did almost, well, I officially did 3 drafts. I think I probably did 6 because John was changing things so much, and I was there living with them in that house, and basically the routine was they were early. Believe it or not, even though if you had read the news stuff back then, you think they were wild late night people. Those guys, they were in bed by 8 o'clock at night, right? And they were early risers, like at the sunrise. And me, I'm the opposite. I work all night, and then so. So we had a system with John and I. We would, and this is the IBM Selectric days. I had the studio bring over an IBM Selectric,
Mm,
and so it's page by page. There's not computer stuff. And when you want to rewrite, it's white out, or it's retype the whole page, or the scene, or whatever it is. So the routine became, I would meet with John around 6 or 7 o'clock. We'd have dinner, Bo and I, and him, and then we'd talk the scene. I'd make furious notes. They go to bed. I work until 1 or 2 or 3. Whenever I'm done, I type. And I was averaging about, anywhere from 15 to 25 pages a night. Yep. I'd leave them in a stack. I'd go to bed. By the time I woke up, John had already gone through them with his notes.
mm.
And so the next night I'd have to redo those pages and then keep going. And then the next night, those pages, and then keep going. And I did that more like almost 5.5 to 6 times over the roughly month that I was there.
Wow.
But I only billed MGM for 3 drafts. I couldn't. looking back, I should have billed them for all six, but hey, it's like,
Well, we do what we have to, right?
yeah. But
Uh,
at the height of Bo's superstardom around the world,
yeah.
she's in a like a house robe, making me breakfast every morning. Bo Derek, the biggest female fatale in femme fatale in the business, is making me breakfast every morning.
That must have been surreal.
It was.
What a great way to start off the career. Actually, you know what? I'm surprised. I do remember that you so you were in a band, right? So none of your passion was ever like to be in a band to play music, you
No,
know?
I was in a band in high school. I had a band in high school.
It
Yeah,
was high school.
yeah,
Okay.
high school,
Okay.
and yeah, and the drummer Tony Moreno, he went on to drum for oh for that'll come to me in a minute. One of the duos when they broke up. He was his drummer for a couple tours and the
Hmm.
recordings and stuff like that. Tony was a good drummer. Um,
What did you play?
Guitar. I had
Cool.
I had a white. Now I grew up lower middle class. My parents did not have a lot of money, but I did manage. Once I had my guitar lessons and was learning guitar, uh, I what I really wanted was a white Fender Stratocaster like Jimi Hendrix. Because if
Mhm.
you get a guitar like Jimi Hendrix, you can play like Jimi Hendrix, right? So
Yeah, that's the
anyway,
idea.
my dad found one used in the news press, in the newspaper, and can't believe it to this day because my dad would not really have a lot of money for stuff, but he paid $200, which was a lot of money back then. I think our monthly rent on the house was 115.
Mm.
So he paid more than a month's rent so I could have this white Stratocaster.
Wow.
But it's the one main thing I always remember my dad. He bought me that guitar, and so anyway, side story. But yeah, I had a band in high school, but we just played at the dances and stuff like that locally.
Still, that's cool. I tried the guitar, but my fingers weren't long enough,
Um,
and you need long fingers to play the guitar, especially well.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. Well, then, you know what? This is one of those career moves that I couldn't even fathom how someone gets in, and I'm talking about how does someone get into the career? And this was before Masters of the Universe, the career of producing like theme park rides.
Well, so I'll try and tell this part fast. So I when I was growing up in Santa Barbara,
Hmm.
I I was when I was really young, I really was into the Disney animation stuff. My grandmother and aunts and stuff would mistake that for an interest in Disney toys. Although I wish I still had all them, because every Christmas I would get like a Mickey Mouse doll or this. I was like, no, I'm into the animation. I'm into the Nine Old Men, and I'm into the back behind the scenes of the camera. And yeah, but they didn't understand. I wish I had all those toys today because they'd be very valuable, but I
Yeah,
don't.
I bet.
But among other things, I read one day that Les Clark, because I read anything that was on the Nine Old Men, the Disney, the making of I would read that. And there was a newspaper article or a magazine article, and Les Clark, who was one of the Nine Old Men, who worked with Freddie Moore and on the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and Les was probably one of the oldest guys that worked there, been there in the early days. Les, in an interview, said, "Oh, I have a home in Santa Barbara, and I go up there on weekends." And I was like, "Wow!" So I looked up the white pages. This is how you take. Look, this is all not some conscious thing. This is true. I was a true fan. I looked up as a Mr. and Mrs. Les Clark. I dial on my dial phone those days, and it was Clark residence. May I help you? I said, yes. Is this the home of Les Clark? Yes, it is. May I help you? Is this the Les Clark that works at Disney? Yes. May I help you? Oh, yeah, well, I couldn't even drive yet, by the way. So I must have been 15 or 16. Is Mr. Clark there? Les, it's for you. Obviously, his wife. He gets on. We talk, great. And I tell him I live in Santa Barbara. He goes, "Oh, well, come up next weekend. Why don't you come up and have a visit? We'll have lunch." And I said, "Okay." So my mom drives me up there to their house, and we have a talk. And he invites me to the studio. Let me know when you come to the studio, and I'll give you a tour of the studio. Oh my God, So then, but my mom didn't drive on freeways then. So my high school drama teacher, he said he would take me. I think he was more excited to go to the studio than I was. So yeah, he wanted to take me, and get to the studio. And Ken Anderson has put me on the pass there. And yeah, it was these, by the way, in those days. I have so many of these.
Look at that.
Yeah, and this one's from Frank Thomas, Frank, one of the Nine Old Men. This one's from Ollie Johnson, one of the Nine Old Men. This one's from Ken Anderson, who was a story man. It's just, so my saga really, it starts because I had I guess, the gumption to
Mm.
call Les Clark at his house and meet him. And then I think weeks later, I get the time, we go down to the studio. Les Clark walks me around and introduces me to the Nine Old Men. I'm whatever I was, like I said, 15 or 16, I think, junior high, I think maybe ninth grade. And these guys, they have this young fan who knows all the work they've done, because I had read the original Art of Animation book, not the big one, not the big white one, the one that was sold in the park during Sleeping Beauty.
Okay.
And that's where there's a famous picture of a sweatbox section of all the Nine Old Men together looking at the screen. It's a black and white picture that the cameraman got from below. And that's the sweatbox sessions. If you haven't read and you don't know, that's when they would all get together and critique each other's work on each film. They'd look at the rough pencils, and they go, "Now you can make that funnier." Blah, blah, blah. So I knew all of them. I knew what they had done. And I would meet each of them. "Oh, you guys, I know you, Frank and Ollie, you worked together and everything. You worked on Sleeping Beauty. You did Flora Fawn and Merriweather." I was this total nerd fan, but
Sure.
very sincere. And I think they got that. So basically, from then on, I had carte blanche. I could call those guys. I'd call Frank or Ollie anytime. And anytime we can get a ride down to the studio, come get a tour and see what they were doing. And I kept that up. And then on one of those tours later, they had the big trailer set up for what was going to be California Institute of the Arts, Walt's last dream, and Walt had left money to build that's college, and they showed me what it was. And I was a junior in high school at that time, and I remember thinking, as they showed it to me, I'd love to go to this, because that was when it was really going to be a campus of the arts. And the whole concept Walt had was the teachers will be working people in the industry, the students, and they will all live on campus together. We'll have homes and everything for them, and they'll live there, and we'll have all the arts represented, and it'll be like this laboratory where you're living, breathing whatever your art is, and the crossover of music school and film school. And to me, this was like heaven. But I had not taken the courses to go to college. I was only taking courses to make my high school graduation, because my plan at the time was, I'm going to go audition and get in a touring show and see the country and be paid for it. And at some point, I'm going to get into an international show and go see the world. My idea was to get in a musical and see the country. I didn't care if I was in the chorus. I didn't care what I was. I just wanted to get in that so I could see the country, and then I could see the world. So when I saw this school, I thought, I have to go there. And then she said, and I said, "But I can't go because I'm not taking the college requirements." And she says, "No, this is going to be the first accredited college where you don't have to have college accreditation. We have a special arrangement with the Western College Association. You'll get a full degree if you get through the full 4 years, and you don't have to have that. Just have to have your high school." So I thought, wow. So that became my goal, to get into Cal Arts, and I did. And I got in, and an interesting story. I wanted to go into theater school as an actor, but they were fully. By the time I found out about it, they had already had their full quota. But the theater and dance school was one school, and so the guy said, "You're very good. Do you dance?" And I said, "Well, I've danced in musicals, but I'm not trained. I'm not like a ballet dancer or that kind of thing." "Well, audition for Bella Lewinsky," who I didn't even know who that was at the time, but probably the most famous modern dance choreographer with her own dance troupe in the country. And so I said, "Okay." So I went and auditioned for her. I thought it was a disaster, but turned out no men. She didn't have men for the classes. And the proof of that is, when I got to the college, the first year when I got in, um, uh, there were probably 60 women, and there were 6 male dancers. I was one of those 6. Because she asked me when I got to the audition, "Do you dance?" I said, "Well, I've danced in musicals. I'm not really trained, but I can move.
Yeah.
So I did an audition, and I got in, and so. But I did it because what he said was, if you get in the dance school, you can take the acting courses. We have an arrangement with the dance school where dancers can take acting classes and actors can take dance classes. So it's not quite the same as being in the theater school, but you'll be able to do that. So, okay, that was my motivation. So after that, Alexander McKendrick was the dean of the film school, and I wanted to get in the film school. And I had to re-audition for the film school. And I got in the film school. And then I was going to leave college because I was ready to move on at that point. I was doing a lot of my own little things outside of the college. And then the new dean of the theater school was someone who had directed me in a production of Merchant of Venice years ago, Michael Addison. And he called me out of the blue, and I wasn't coming back. He said, I understand you're not coming back. He said, well, I think I'm going to move on. He goes, well, I'd like you to come back to the theater school. I'm going to be there. We're going to do some exciting things. And basically I said, okay. And so I thought that was an invitation to come, but then I got a notice from the thing I had to audition again. So I had to audition. This is what I had to audition for the dance school, the film school, and the theater school. And I was accepted into all of them. So that will tell you I was kind of a roundabout guy at that time.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to be a film director. I knew who William Wyler was, and he was my touchstone back then, William Wyler, and a couple of Frank Capra.
I'm just not seeing that segue into the theme park.
Well, I'm getting there. It's the Disney connection. So the Disney connection is I know those guys, and I keep going there once in a while from the when I'm at Cal Arts, I drive in from Valencia and get a studio. And then I finally wanted to go to Imagineering because Mark Davis, one of the original Nine Old Men, who animated both, he was known as the ladies' man because he would animate the women. So in Sleeping Beauty, he animated both Maleficent and Aurora, both. And then his last piece of animation before he moved to Imagineering was Cruella de Vil. And he smoked a cigarette with a cigarette holder, with the thing. So all those moves that she does, he knew those moves very well because that's how he smoked. But anyway, so I wanted to meet Mark, and they said, well, you got to go over to Imagineering. I knew all about Imagineering. That wasn't a surprise, but so I did. I arranged a tour with Mark, and Mark Davis gave me a tour, and I met Mark there for the first time, and then Herbie Ryman, and then the whole group. And then I went and visited them a couple more times. And then by the time I was finishing Cal Arts, through a strange twist of fate, I was offered a job to go to Orlando at Walt Disney World. And it had been my dream to go to Orlando since it had opened in 71, right? 71? 71.
I'm there.
And now this was 74. It was only 3 years later. To work as a director, as a stage director for a summer college program called Hoop-de-Doo, the Wild West Dinner Show. And Larry Billman was the original writer with Larry Adair, Tom Adair. They wrote this little dinner show that was going to go in Fort Wilderness. And I was brought on to be kind of originally brought on to be an assistant director. I wound up being kind of more of a co-director because when Larry got there, he would leave to go write up, I don't know what he was doing. He was writing up notes or something. And he would say, well, why don't you just stage this next, which was, I think it was being kind to me to let me, and everyone thought this was a little summer thing with this summer cast. So there was no heavy Disney executive eyes on it. It was also in Fort Wilderness. If you know the Florida property, Fort Wilderness is off on its own across the lagoon. It's a campground that's part of the Disney World property for campers and RVs. And they now have a hotel there, Fort Wilderness Hotel, but that wasn't there then. But they had this complex, the Pioneer Hall. They wanted this dinner show. And so we did the dinner show, and it was a big hit, such a big hit that it was making money, and all these college kids had to go home after the thing. So I got a call in about 3 weeks before the gig was up by the president of the, because I was supposed to go home too. This was a summer gig. And the president of the entertainment division and the vice president of entertainment called me in, and they say, well, we have good news. And and the guy that was the head of the entertainment was probably his white hair. He probably was 60 something, 65. The vice president was younger, probably about 55. But these are the two adults in the room. I'm the kid. I'm 22, just out of college, and hey, good news. He looks at me across the desk. Oh, what? Operations and food division, they want to continue the Hoop-de-Doo show because it's making money and they want to keep it going. I said, oh, that's great. So we want you to contract the cast, get contracts for them. And we'll, Dick Orr, that was next to him, we'll get the contracts ready and get them to sign. I'm the kid in the room, the most inexperienced theoretically. I go, okay, I don't think you can do that. And the guy looks at me and goes, what do you mean we can't do this? I said, oh, I'm sorry. You can do it, but if I go in there with those contracts, every one of them will sign it. But they all came from different cities around the country from college, and you're going to have every one of those families and colleges calling Disney out for enticing their kids to stay and not go back to school. And the guy, swear to God, he looked at the other guy. They looked at each other. And he goes, to me, well, what do we do?
That sounds about right.
To this day, I just laugh. Like, what do we do? So, well, we could hold an audition here locally. We can have an audition for people that live here, and we can cast a professional cast. and we'll only need to close the show for about a week. We can rehearse off stage, we can, immediately before the kids leave in 3 weeks, and then we'll need like a week to put them on the stage. And he looks at me and goes, "Can you do that?" This is the head of the entertainment division who doesn't have the first friggin' idea of what's involved in doing. He says, "Can you do that?" I said, "Yeah, I can do that." "Okay, work with Dick here, and how are we going to do it?" I said, "Well, I don't know, Dick. We need a room like at the Contemporary Resort or something. One of the ballrooms with a stage. We can have auditions there. We'll have to put an ad out for the next 5 days, and we'll see who shows up, and we'll spend a day or two casting. And I don't think we'll need to have callbacks. I think we'll just we'll cast." And he goes, "Okay, well, okay, let's go." So that was the level of what we. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You really realize that most executives really don't know what they're doing. They depend upon the people beneath them. But that one blew me away because I was thinking at the moment, I am the junior person in this room, and I know more than either of these idiots. God.
He probably just had a way of pitching it too, because it was Bill Stout said that you were the best pitch artist he's ever met, and pitching something, pitching a project, pitching a story,
I've
an
heard
idea.
That before.
Yeah.
I think what it is, I think the end result is I'm a good pitcher, but I'm a good pitcher because of three things. I do my homework. I know whatever it is I'm going. I believe in it. If I don't believe in it, I won't do it. I can't do it. So therefore, I think my passion comes through, and I have been. I'm the opposite of an elitist. I'm very much a generalist. I read a lot. I watch a lot. I listen. And I feel like you have to keep the computer, your brain. You got to keep feeding it, things. So yeah, in my life now, as I look back, I do have a kind of a unique sense of not only story sense, and not only because I've written screenplays, I've written tons of theme park attractions, stage shows and things. The Conan show, Universal, and the Terminator 2 3D attraction, the Spider-Man ride, all these things. And sometimes other people input. The Spider-Man ride had another writer after I was not on the project anymore to rewrite it. But that's my structure. The concept, the structure, the story sequence, Statue of Liberty, all that stuff. It's all me. And how? Because I knew Spider-Man. I grew up with Spider-Man. I read the Marvel comics. I collected those comics, Fantastic Four, X-Men. And not only that, I know the DC universe. I mean, and I have an uncanny ability, an uncanny spider sense. I have an uncanny ability to understand, because of my broad background in both live entertainment and filmed entertainment and all of these different mediums. And then the theme park, well, I missed the big step. Sorry, but you'll have to cut this all together so I sound intelligent. But what happened was I knew Mark Davis, and I went out to do that 52 show. So let me bring it back around to how I got into all this.
Okay.
Then I did realize at various points in my life that it's time to move on. Like my second year in college, I was ready to move on. And then an external force, a director that had directed me in a show years before, coincidentally, is now the dean of theater school. He asked me back. I'm thinking I'm invited, so I say yes. Then I get the notice I have to audition again. So but I did. That did it. Then so now I get engaged right before graduating from Cal Arts. I mean, I look back at this and think, wow. Literally, I promoted this workshop that we had done in Santa Barbara that was in the newsletter from Cal Arts that goes out to all the shareholders and people who are behind the thing. And Bob Yanni, who was the senior vice president of all entertainment for Disneyland and Disney World, saw it and asked to. This is the days when you get a message, because there's only phones. I get a message: go see Donald Biggs in the executive wing at the college at Cal Arts. Donald Biggs says, "There's a man named Robert Yanni, and he's called you, and he would like to talk to you." "Okay, who's that?" "Well, he's the vice president of entertainment for live entertainment for Disneyland." So, okay, great. So I call him. He wants to have a meeting, and we have a meeting. Tony Christopher, who I grew up with in Santa Barbara, Tony and I worked on a couple of things together. So I told about him, and we both went to this meeting. And Robert Yanni liked us and talked to us, and then said, "Well, I'm going to do this workshop once a week when I'm in town. When I'm not in town, we'll have a whole over the next 8 to 12 weeks about the live entertainment industry, and it's only for invited people, and I'd like to invite you to come." And I looked at Tony and I said, "Yeah, I think I'd love to. I think we'd love to, but we're college students. We don't have any money for this. They go, no, it's free. You just need to just come. I said, oh, okay, we're in. So so we did that. And at the end of that, there were about 18 people that he had invited. All but three of us, Tony and I and one other person, were actually Disney employees at various places in the park that he saw something in. Some were tech, some were performing. They were all invited. And then he gave us a kind of not a test, but an assignment at the end to create new concepts for Disneyland. And that was right up my alley and Tony's alley. We came up with a bunch of concepts. We got a friend who was in the animation school at CalArts to do some drawings for us and stuff. I went in and did a whole presentation. So of that group, two of us were offered a job, Tony and I, to go to Florida to Walt Disney World. We were graduating from college, and literally 2 weeks after college, we would be on a plane to Orlando. And get this, they're flying us there. We have a job. There's an apartment there, a 2-bedroom apartment for us for the whole summer, and we get paid. And it's like, all these college kids that get out of college, now what do I do? We're friggin' on a plane. By the way, first class on Eastern Airlines, which doesn't exist anymore, but that was the Walt Disney World plane. And so it was kind of mind-blowing the whole time. And on top of that, we got a company car when we arrived there. We had to share it, but we had a company car. Company car means on the entire Walt Disney property, you can go anywhere. We didn't realize that for the first 6 weeks. And then we realized, hey, we can go backstage. We can go anywhere with this car. And they just wave you on, So we really, as two right out of college students who were both Disney nuts, man, we went in the underground tunnels there. We went all over, So we had a good time. Anyway, during that time, I let Mark Davis know, because I got to know Mark pretty well during that time, that we've been hired by Disney World. I stayed in touch with him, and I'd send them a little note every once in a while to Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson and Mark Davis, tell them what I was doing. And then I would also keep them appraised of other projects and things that were going on that I was working on. And then a year and a half went by, and I had this moment in my life where I was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I stayed on to the Hoop-De-Doo show, and that was very challenging. But now I was basically running it, basically a glorified, not a stage manager, because I didn't have a headset. I didn't have to call any cues, but I was kind of like the producer in the back of the house that was there in case something would go wrong, just to make what they call a show ops supervisor, area supervisor. So this I don't know, but I gave my note. I finally realized I'm giving my notice. I'm going to go up to New York, scout it out. I had accrued about 10 days worth of vacation because I volunteered for any other assignments. When they have the, grad nights and whatever nights and these nights, I would volunteer. And so I was going to take my vacation time and go up to New York, find a place to live, come back, get my stuff and go up there and make my way on Broadway. That was my plan. So I came back and there was a message waiting for me from Mark, from Orlando Ferrante, who was the business guy at Imagineering, but I didn't know that name. But I got back from my 10 days. I basically had 3 days left now and was just going to wrap up and leave. And I got back and there's a note in those little boxes I had in those days where you get your messages and your emails and stuff. Not emails, but, memos. So it says, come see Dick Ross. So I go, he was the president again. He goes, Orlando Ferrante wants you to call him. I was like, who's Orlando Ferrante? Because I wouldn't know him, right? He's the business head at Imagineering. I only knew the Mark Davis guys, the creative guys. Right. Well, he's in charge of WED, Imagineering. He's a WED. They call it WED then. WED. And I go, oh, okay. I call him, hey, Gary, hey, it's nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Well, Mark Davis speaks very highly of you, and we've heard that you're leaving the company. Oh, well, yeah, I'm thinking 3 days. He goes, well, we'd like to fly you out here. We'd like to have a fly out and have an interview. Would you consider working at Imagineering? Yeah. It's like that was a dream of mine. But I thought at that point that if you weren't an artist, you could. To me, Imagineer was a bunch of artists, designer, illustrator, you guys, or architects, and and so I was like, yeah, all right, well, we'll fly you out. When can you leave? I said, well, I can leave right away. But I got 3 days left here. So he was okay, we'll fly you out. So I flew me out first class, round trip, Eastern Airlines, put me up at the Universal Sheraton in Universal City, because that was the best hotel in the valley at that time. Had a rent car ready for me. And they flew me out on Friday, and my meeting was on Monday morning. So I had the whole weekend at the hotel and, all that. So I go over there. When I tell this to young people now who are trying to get into Imagineering as an apprentice, as a trainee, they can't believe it. So I think I was, so what I was 20, I was 21 when I went to 21, 22. So I think I was 23. I was 23 or 24. And so I walked down the what I now know was the golden the golden hallway, um, and I meet with John Hench. I don't know if you know who these guys are, but John Hench,
Mm.
Marty Sklar, Mark Davis, and Orlando Ferrani, just the four of them in John Hench's office. And I go in, and they go, "Okay, well, tell us about yourself." "Well, yeah, about theater, blah blah blah. Did this, this, and that." "Well, Hoop to Do is a great show. Yeah, we're very proud of it. Yeah." "So, do you draw?" I said, "Nah, I don't really draw. I do bad napkin sketches. That's about the level of my drawing." I said, and I remember saying, especially in a place like this with the
Mm.
guys you have here, you know. They go, "Okay, well, do you write?" Interesting. I never thought of myself as a writer, even though by that time I had written my own musicals in high school. I had written short plays, scenes. I'd written business letters. I mean, I wrote a lot, but I never thought of myself as a writer because I was thinking of myself as a director, right?
Hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, well, no, I can write. Yeah, I can write." "Okay. Well, Mark, do you have something that he could work on?" "Well, Mark, now I'm working on the expansion of Fort Wilderness, and I'm working on that fun house and that arcade, and you could probably work on that with me." "How's that sound, Gary?" "Oh, sounds good to me." "Okay, well, how soon can you be here?" "Well, I have to fly back and pack my car, and I have to drive it across the U.S., so I guess I could be here like in a week." He goes, "All right, so start next Monday?" uh yeah, sure. "Okay, go upstairs to Orlando and make your deal and get your contract, and we'll see you in a week." Okay. So I mean, you know, I look back because it's really interesting because I look back and think, how is it that I did theme parks and films and but there is this kind of path,
Yeah.
and at times I was ready to close one path, and I would make the decision, I'm closing this path, right? And then, like college, I'm closing this path, and then a call came from this director that I direct with. He directed me a show when I was like 16 or 17 in Merchant Venice, and he's going to run the thing. Okay. I was going to leave. I made the decision. I'm leaving Disney because I never really saw myself as a day-to-day employee kind of person. It was not my thing. And
Mhm.
and I get back and there's a call waiting for me, and the call leads to that. And so now I wind up in Imagineering, and then in Imagineering, I meet John DeCure. John DeCure, the award-winning production designer that did movies. The movies your people would know for sure is Ghostbusters. That
Mm.
was the first Ghostbusters. Was one of his last big movies that he production designed. But in his heyday, he did Cleopatra. He did The
Oh.
King and I. He did South Pacific. I mean, the guy is, Hello Dolly,
Mm.
the famous Hello Dolly sets, that Gene Kelly shot the movie on. So he was a legend. And then Claudio Mazzoli, who had just come over from Italy and spoke very little English, but my mom was Italian. And even though I don't speak Italian, I can understand a lot, and enough of it that like we can communicate with our hands and talk about this and that. And we worked on things together. And he came to me one day and said, "I have an idea for a movie, uh, 10 Commandments in Space." And I laughed. "Oh, that's funny." And then I went back to my office, and like an hour later, I came back and said, because I was a big fan. Another thing I was reading at the time, which will blow your mind, I discovered Eric von Daniken in high school, the first book he wrote, Chariots of the Gods. And that fueled
Wow.
my thoughts. So I started thinking, well, what if there was kind of a 10 Commandments? What if Earth wasn't, what if was something pre-existed? And so the end of it, you see this whole movie, it opens and you think you're in some highly advanced version of Egypt, these high-tech pyramids. And when you're first coming in, the sun's coming up, and you only
Mm.
see the silhouette, and you think, "Oh, this is Egypt. Those are pyramids." You get closer, and as they're starting to come out of shadow, you see this spaceship coming, and this ship going,
Mm.
leaving one of them, another one leaving another one. What's going on here? And then you see their highly covered metallic future. It's a futuristic. Okay, we're not in Egypt. We're in some other place. So without ever stating it, we think we're on another planet that has these, this version of architecture, and yet it's different. And the end is, you remember, if you follow 10 Commandments and the whole story, remember only two people were allowed to go to the promised land because everyone else, partied up a little too much and forgot their position. So I used that. So for the end, I build the whole thing up. A meteorite storm parts for the ship instead of, and then immediately closes in on the opposing spaceships that are chasing them, and this massive ship that's taking this whole group to another promised planet somewhere, planet world. And at the end, when only two can go, they pick Jason and his wife, these two, and they send them off. And as the ship goes towards the planet, it's a blue planet. It's a shining blue planet, and it crash lands in a paradise of Eden, which is Earth, with animals and stuff. And out they come from the wreckage of the ship, practically naked. And so basically, the whole thing, was you've been watching the whole movie, think it's in the future, it's in the past, and
Right.
so that was the Twilight Zone, trick ending.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Planet of the Apes in a way,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, real quick before we just go to Motu, and they're going to kill me if I don't go to Motu now.
Yeah.
But I got to see T2 3D Battle Across Time. That was so fun. Jurassic Park the ride. The one I didn't get to go to was Your Adventures of Conan, the one that led you to Masters of the Universe. That Sword and Sorcery Spectacular. Once I got there, my father was born in Germany. He was very strict. He was very, these theme parks are tacky. I won't take you to these things, and I wanted to go. By the time I get
it's verboten.
Basically.
Night.
So once I got there, they transformed it into like a Hercules and Xena show, if you remember those syndicated televisions.
Oh my God, I'm glad I never saw that.
Yeah, it was rough. But so all right, but that was, so you're into theme parks, you did Conan, because of Conan, that's it's interesting with Masters of the Universe is, I got to see some of your Conan show, on YouTube. Thank God for YouTube, right? They really should come up with an idea of preserving all of these, it's a shame that these are yanked and some of them just are yanked out of existence. But the Conan show, you have this wonderful stage where all this action is happening, and it reminds me of Castle Grayskull. I kind of see that theater attraction sensibility in your Masters of the Universe movie. Was that subliminal or was that intentional? Or
I think that Masters of the Universe is derivative, not the concept, but the style of Frank Frazetta and all of the stuff that came before. So all of us were dipping from the same well. All of us, the Mattel designers, myself, and a whole world of other young designer, director, whatever. We all grew up on Frank Frazetta, Jack Kirby. We all have the same influences. So in that sense, from a design standpoint, I don't think it's that far off. I think you're right. There is there's not a direct association with Masters of the Universe, but indirectly from the pool of references and the pool of styles that I think were in our collective imaginations at that point came from that. And other influences in other worlds at that time, you would have seen, if we were doing a future thing, you would have seen the influences of Sid Mead and others of that world, because there was no internet then. You had to be kind of a, I don't want to say a nut, let's say a fan of that world. Yeah. And I devoured any book with a Frank Frazetta cover I wanted. I searched for Sid Mead articles and Sid Mead art wherever you could find them before there were Sid Mead books, right? So I think you're right in one thing, that there was a group of us that were doing different versions of different aspects of that whole sword and sorcery world. The thing that I thought was most fascinating about the Masters of the Universe thing, I was not a giant Masters of the Universe fan when they hired me, but I certainly was well aware of it. And in fact, I had presented a different concept to Mattel for a project we were doing that had the Crystal Castle, and they stole it for She-Ra. They told me after they brought in 5 other people, come in because we're doing a presentation, and they brought this person, and then afterwards they go, well, we have to tell you, we're already developing a Crystal Castle. Oh, can I see it? Well, no, you can't see it. It's like, but you've seen mine. I like this. No, we can't show it. We can't show it. So I know this. Wow. But I had a great relationship with Mattel, so I didn't care. I was selling them Captain Power.
Yeah, I remember Captain Power.
Yeah. So So I think you're on to the fact that all of us would have to be all of us of that period. Bill Stout. I mean, Bill Stout and I would talk about
Yeah.
Frazetta, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. I mean, we shared all of those things. And I think Bill, as a great artist in himself, he would tell you that back when he was younger, those were the influences. Of course, you know.
But not just the influences itself, your design of Castle Grayskull, which is this elaborate set, two sound stages, right? It
Yeah,
almost looks like it could also be a theme park attraction, with all the different ramps, and you could fight here, maneuver, and it
yeah,
almost looks like a show in a way.
yeah. Well, that was designed for what was going to be the greatest sword fight ever. But I'm sure you know that saga. That's
Yeah.
canon. That, but no, the reason for that set was, you know, I mean, one of the complaints I do hear from masters of the movies, there should have been more on Eternia. There should have been more. They have to
Yeah.
understand there was almost nothing on Eternia when I got involved. Okay, and they didn't want to hear about it because they want to do the movie for $15 million and they want to have big sets and big this and big that. So I did a rewrite of this entire script, which Ed Pressman refused to read because David Odell, I didn't realize until that moment, was the best man at his wedding. David Odell was, they
Mm.
were like tight. So I said, well, don't you want to read it? Because no, I don't want to read it. So I said, okay. So what happened was I needed to come up with an idea for how to have Eternia in this in a way that I could sell the budget. And I suddenly came up with this idea that if I opened in the throne room and closed in the throne room, I could justify to them that it would probably cost less in the long run because we wouldn't have to be outside. We wouldn't be subject to weather conditions. As soon as you go exterior on any movie, you run the risk of rain, of wind, of this, of that, of being able to, there's all kinds of things that come with that. The crew has to all go there. There's the traveling. It's a whole thing. So, so I wrote a new opening and I wrote a new closing, and I went in and pitched it to Menahem at Canon, and I said, "He's why would I build this big set? I got you. I'm not going to build a big blah, 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 blah." I was like, "Well, here's my thinking. If you let me build this set, basically almost half the movie will be on this set. We'll shoot the opening 18 to 20 minutes and the last 30 to 40 minutes on this set." And we control the lighting, we control the cast. We don't have to worry about trucks, weather. We don't have to worry about that stuff. And Menahem thought for a minute. He goes, "Okay." I don't remember the number. He said, "But no more than whatever the number was. Whatever, I don't know in those days it was 200,000 for the set or 400. I don't know what it was. He goes, "But no more than that." Okay, okay, okay. So what I feel like is I was able to preserve more of a feeling of Eternia than there would have been in that movie. The original script opened literally with the scene of a knock on the door and Julie's there, and she's alone. Her parents have already left for wherever they were going. There's a knock on the back door. She goes to it. She opens it, and there's this warrior, He-Man, who collapses in front of her, and then that's where the adventure begins.
Oh, wow.
So I thought it was a very. I said I don't want to introduce He-Man as a fallen figure being rescued and saved by a 16-year-old girl. So that was all going on in my head as I was trying to figure out how to open this, how to close it, how to make it work for a budget, and all those other reasons that go along with it. But by justifying that set, we got that set, and I do feel that it allowed us to bookend the picture in a good way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do remember a long time ago hearing you guys were scouting locations in Iceland, which
Yeah,
would have been really wild to see, because they have
yeah.
such gorgeous landscapes,
Not only that, but it's magic hour there for about 9 months out of the year. It's never daylight, so we would have had this incredible visual lighting for that opening battle. It would have been amazing.
Ah. And speaking of never daylight, I mean, I think you guys hold the record, or you held the record for a while of the most consecutive night shoots in Masters of the Universe. There was a movie a couple years later, I think, after Hours. I think it might have been the movie that took the record over. But
here's how Canon was penny-wise and pound foolish. Okay,
yeah.
I went to them and said, we need to hire a second unit, and I was going to get Mickey, the guy that the famous stunt guy, and he wanted to do it. Mickey. He did the Indiana Jones truck sequence. That's one of his more famous ones, right?
Right.
And I didn't have any illusions of being, the kind of action director, stunt director those guys are. Um, so we got a price from Mickey and his crew. They would have done it. And I went to that one. I couldn't sell him on Manam. I said, Manam, you know, I'm going to be out there with a full complement of 50 to 80 technicians trying to get a shot of He-Man on a disc flying through the thing. And if we had a second unit, they can just go do that. No, I'm not. We don't do second units. You're the director. You shoot. I said, okay, so
Is
I mean,
that
it was
supposed
really.
to save time and money?
You just couldn't believe it. It was just not logical. They didn't want to spend a little more money for Mickey Moore. I think Mickey Moore's his name, I believe. And he would have shot all that sequence and done a better job than me, honestly, because that's all he would have been doing.
Mm.
And I'm out there with with two stuntmen to cover, with He-Man on a disc, on one of those camera trucks, on a thing with his sword, the camera crews, camera on the thing, get all the lighting right, get the street right. And meanwhile, the rest of the company, the other actors or whoever's on call, they're all just sitting in their friggin' trailers. They're just la-di-da-di-da. So I had to shoot. I mean, I literally shot every frame of that film, with the exception of, we did, for those shots, the stunt crew, Walt and his team. They did allow us to have a second unit and a couple of times with a third unit cameras, just to get things at different angles, so we did have things to cut to, but not a full second unit, just a second camera and a third camera to catch some of these flight scenes and stuff like that. And as it is, we barely had enough to cut that all together. Yeah.
those those Canon guys, their reputation preceded them, right? I think both of them have passed away, I believe.
Yeah, but we have a Drew Struzan poster because I was able to.
Yeah.
I think Manam liked me in a certain way, but it was interesting because the marketing was starting, and Ozzy Zakin was the name of the person in charge of the marketing department at Canon, and she brings me these comps, these typical Canon, photoshopped comps of Dolph, just awful, just awful.
I've seen their stuff for Delta Force and stuff. It's just,
I'm like, well, Ozzy, that's not going to work for this movie. What do you mean? So we can't do this Photoshop stuff for this, but that's what Canon does. I said, but not for this film. We need something. We see this little, and she knew who Drew Struzan. I said, like, we need to have Drew Struzan. She goes, oh,
you ever see his book posters? It's wonderful.
Yeah, she goes, Manon won't pay for him. I've tried. He will not pay for him. I said, well, we got to try, because we have to have a Drew Struzan poster for this thing, and he won't do it. Okay. Get a meeting with me, get a lunch. I'll come in I was shooting Glendale now. I'll come in from Glendale. Let me talk to him. Let me see. Okay. I'll set it up. They set it up like 48 hours later. Mm-hmm. I go down to Larry Edmonds. You wouldn't know this unless you're in LA, but Larry Edmonds bookstore in those days, that was the only place you could go to get movie posters or screenplays, or it was that era. You had to know where the little old book places were that specialized in this Hollywood stuff.
I gotcha.
And I went and got 4 or 5 Drew Struzan posters of the time. And bought him, and going through the meeting, and he's in there, he's eating at his desk. It's lunchtime, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but Menahem ate half the food. Anyone that knows Menahem will tell you this. Half the food was in his half-grown beard. It was, and he'd just be, okay, tell me what you want. Tell me what you do. The whole time about the poster. Okay, just a second. I lay out all the posters on the floor with little books and magazines to hold them so they won't roll up. I just lay them all out. And he goes, and I say, Madam, these are the posters of the movies that we all like. This is, I don't remember what it was, Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. and
E.T. Yeah.
And he said, one guy did these. Drew Struzan's his name. He did these posters. We have to have Drew Struzan do the poster for Masters of the Universe. And he goes, how much? I said, $18,000. Oh, looks at OC. She goes, I told him it was too much. I said, Madam, we have to have him. We have to have him. We have to have a poster by Drew Struzan for this movie. He goes, okay, yeah, do it, okay. That's how we got it,
Yeah, it gives it an extra level of authenticity.
Yeah,
But
no, it does. But you look at that and think, okay, this looks cool. I want to go see
yeah,
this, right? Yeah,
credibility, right? I mean,
yeah,
you look at this film and it's still a surprise it came out of canon, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
based
Yeah.
on their previous resume. So
So again, fortune smiles on who? The bold. So I just lucked into this. I demanded that we use Richard Edlund had just broken off from ILM and started Boss Films to do special effects for films. And I said to Mom, again, you want to have a film, you got to get this guy. This guy should do the effects. Blah, 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 blah. Sold him and everything. Too expensive. Well, we need to get him. And we finally got him. The benefit that we got that I didn't know, I did know that he shot in the 65 millimeter film, that whole bit that ILM did. I know all that. I didn't know that only 2 labs in the world could process that film at that time. And one of them was MGM, the MGM processing lab, thank God. So I always wondered why the Canon films generally, almost always, have a kind of a muddy quality to them. I don't know if you've ever noticed.
yeah,
Very, very few Canon films, if any, other than Masters Universe, have that crisp look on the screen. And so it turns out, as soon as we got Boss on, they signed the contract. Somewhere in there, months later, he finds out that they can't do the lab in New Jersey. All Canon films, because in that time, films were processed by the foot, penny a foot, 2 cents a foot, 10 cents a foot, whatever it was, right? So they had to deal with one lab in New Jersey. All Canon films had their film processed there. My theory is that's why they all look so kind of muddy, kind of not crisp, because they all were at the bargain basement, developing lab. So it turns out our films can't. And at first he said, well, we'll do the regular 35 millimeter film there. We'll do the 65 millimeter at the MGM lab. And I had to get Edlund and 3 other experts to tell him, if you do that, the movie won't cut. It will look like the lab has to do all of the footage that are in the film for it to have the same texture and quality. So that upped the budget by, I don't know, by some percentage point. But he had to do it because we had the effects deal. The deal. Edlund had of the full budget. Edlund had a $4 million budget to start, which wound up being closer to a $6 million budget before it was done. So
it was so worth it. Those effects were great, especially the prism. That appears over like the cosmic key. Oh.
Yeah.
And it looks great on Blu-ray too. I mean, those effects hold up, and it's probably the same reason why you're explaining now. So. Go ahead, finish.
Yeah, please. No. So that was it. Was inch by inch. Everything was a battle to try and keep the quality in. And and before you ask the off question, why wasn't there Orko? And why wasn't there Battle Cat? And why wasn't there Prince Adam? So 3 things I can answer those quickly. When you're looking at the budget and the schedule and everything else, what can we do and do well? And at that time, and if it was CG, if we were in a CG world, then I agree with all you. We could have had everything. We could have Battle Cat. We could have everything. Okay, we weren't in a CG world. We were in a stop motion world. So Orko was either going to be a stop motion character, which I thought would detract from the film, or it's a little person on wires. And then every scene we gotta have this Orko guy zipping around and And I just said that we can't. Here's what I really thought: we can't do it, and we can't do it well. So we shouldn't do it. Let's do what we can do well in the budget and the schedule that we have, and with this idea of being in the contemporary world of the 80s. Same thing with Battle Cat. I love Battle Cat. I would have loved nothing more than to have him appear on Earth with that cat. But what were the options? Either we get a real cat, which isn't really going to look like Battle Cat, and even if we got a real cat, it's not going to do what Battle Cat does, isn't it? That's a whole thing about
Well, back then they would paint. If you remember Beastmaster, they painted a tiger to look like a panther. I don't know why they couldn't get a panther, but you could always see underneath the Black Panther that it was a tiger. And then somewhere between Beastmaster and Beastmaster 2, I guess dyeing tiger's fur became illegal because now he had a tiger next to him instead of a panther. So. But I see your point. Look, I was one of those kids that used to, at first I was like, where is Battle Cat? Where is Orko? You don't know as a kid, the financial constraints, the practical necessary needs, right?
Yeah, and then finally the Prince Adam. Well, what I realized was he doesn't need to be Prince Adam on Earth. There's no, and if we get into it, then it's a whole backstory that he's got to go, well, I'm Prince Adam, and I'm from blah, 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 blah. So I just thought he's going to appear as He-Man. He's going to just be He-Man. And we're going to leave all that for another movie, when he gets back to it, so we can find out he's Prince Adam and all this kind of stuff. So those were conscious decisions that were made to what we felt were making the best of the situation, the budget that we had and the schedule that we had. What can we do? And my lodestar was, if we can't do it well, let's not do it. Let's not do it. And so that's why those decisions were made. And on the Eternian side, it was my draft of the film that opened up with a battle for Eternia and established all that up front. So we had an establishment of Eternia before we go to Earth. So otherwise, he'd have to tell people what Eternia is. He'd go, well, Eternia is this place I come from, and blah, 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 blah. And, it's just cheesy. So, I believe in that idea of dropping people in the middle of something and then having the audience go along with you as the characters begin to try to understand who this is and what's going on and what this is. And so that's it. And yes, and we created Gwildor as an original character to be a little bit of comic relief and to replace the Orko character. That's true.
It's interesting because there were so many reactions like that. But then as those kids that were like, where's Battle Cat? Where is Orko? Where's Prince Adam? They grew into adults and they started, appreciating this. And since then, there's been a lot of different iterations of Masters of the Universe, and they start appreciating those iterations and they start understanding the restrictions, especially of movie making at that time. You wonder if this wasn't attached to a toy line, your movie as it stands, I wonder how it would have fared. Because then it would have been just there was so much new content in the 80s, right?
Yeah,
Fantasy films like Beastmaster, like Kroll, Dragon Slayer, Conan, even though that was based on the pulp novels. But I wonder how it would have fared if there wasn't a toy line behind it.
Well, I don't know, but I think we were trying to I wanted to have an epic feeling to it, and I think it did.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to feel like a typical. I mean, most of the toy movies at that time bombed bad, and they were, goofy. And I didn't want it to be goofy. I wanted to have some kind of a core of authenticity, I guess, to it, And if it was up to the toy guys, and I had those meetings. Now, this is interesting. I don't know if I've told this story before. I may have in one of these, but the toy guys gave us a list of all the characters they wanted in the movie. It was like 16, 20 characters. We went Trapjaw and this guy and that, It's like, So I had to have a meeting at Mattel, and I had a little bit of an outline and a few pictures of the Wizard of Oz and Star Wars. I said, I want you to see how many characters we can follow in a story without it becoming goofy. And I basically showed them that in terms of the characters, that Star Wars and Wizard of Oz are basically almost the same. It's a small group of characters who meet one by one along the way, and they are challenged by an opposing force, which is stronger. And I took them through that, and I said, guys, this is what we have to do. We have to have a few people from Eternia. We have to have the two kids, and then we have to have our villain, right, Skeletor and his minions. And I said, we can't have all these characters. We can't have these people popping up. And plus, the format doesn't work for it. These guys are coming to Earth. What, you're going to have Trapjaw and I can't remember all of them. Two-Face and not Two-Face. What's it? Man-E-Face. Man-E-Face. They had them all. They had all the toys. Can't do it, guys. You got to go to Eternia for this. So you got to be on Eternia to meet all these characters. And I said, by the way, even on Eternia, you can't do this. People can't follow the story. You can have some supportive characters in the background, not make much, and then you can feature one or two or three in each of the movies you do. But you can't. It's not a commercial for 20, toys. It's not what you're doing. So they took it pretty well, actually. When I actually showed them Wizard of Oz and Star Wars as two really good examples of a fantasy story being told and how you have to appreciate the characters. And then the studio on the other side Why do you want Frank Langella? You could just hire him as a voice artist. You know, you could just have anyone in that mask and then just have him do the voiceover. I said, no. And this guy's, when he walks in a room, and the way he walks in a room and the way he holds himself. I said, this guy's an actor, like a Shakespearean actor. He knows how a king would sit. He knows how an emperor would rule. He knows the body language. And you can't get that in some guy. You just hire him and, you know, put a mask on him. You can't get that. So that was a fight. He was the most expensive guy. Well, I think Dolph was the most, and then I think Frank got $400,000 at the time, was a lot of money. But I fought for him. I flew to New York and met with him, and I'd seen him in Amadeus on Broadway. And I made the connection that the character of Amadeus, not Wolfgang, not Salieri. He played Salieri, the villain, the guy that's jealous of Mozart's talent. I said, Salieri, that's Skeletor. That's who he is. He has this envy and this jealousy of He-Man, because He-Man's everything he isn't. He's good, he's handsome, he's strong, he's smart. And I knew Frank would have that internal sensibility of what drives this guy. And I said to him, I said, because when I met with him, he goes, I don't, you know, my kids are into it, and and part of him wants to do it, but I don't want to be an actor that goes, get him. And that's what the script was at the time. The script was, get him, you know, you fools, you know. Like,
yeah.
And I said, no, Frank, I'm going to rewrite it, and you're going to be the centerpiece of the film. I said, in terms of, you're going to drive it. You're going to drive the movie, and I want this guy to be somewhere between a Shakespearean villain, and I said, and Salieri, because to me, Salieri that's the guy. That's his internal thing. He's jealous of this guy, of everything about him.
Well, you heard like 5 or 7 years ago, Frank said it's like either his favorite role or one of his favorite roles of all time.
Yeah,
still.
It is. Yeah. And what he said was, well, would you mind if I, you know, have ideas for what he could say? I said, I want your ideas. I'll work with you. We can take every scene and go through it, which we did. We would generally do it the day before the shoot of that scene, because we didn't want to turn the pages into the studio or to anyone else and have them go, what are you doing? What that's not what was in the script, you know? So
it turned out to be, I mean, the US fans, you poll them, what do they love most? It's Frank's performance, you know?
Yeah.
He's amazing.
But I'll tell you what was most important to me beyond that. That was important to me. I knew I had to look. It was Dolph's second movie, and at that time, and I have nothing but praise for Dolph. He works hard and everything, and he's been doing great. But at that time, he had an acting coach, and the acting coach, I don't know what he was telling him, but it was hard to get him to be subtle. He had a very, you know, aggressive, but it's okay. That was fine. But what I wanted in the movie, what I wrote in was. I wanted the film to have a heart at the center of it too. So to me, the moment in the movie that I hoped every young kid that was watching the movie would hear is when they're in the crisis, and Gwildor needs the musician to come up with the notes that are needed to activate the sphere home, and he said, I can't do it. I'm just a high school rock band, and. Gwildor, I remember. This I remember. I'm pretty sure I remember correctly. Gwildor looks at him. The camera moves in slightly, and he says, "Only one of you, Kevin. Only one of you in all the universe." Now, you know, and that was my line, and that's the line of the whole movie that I hope that would resonate with young people. You know, someone, and at a fan show, God, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You know, the Q&A at the end when the people come up to the microphone and ask questions. And we had
PowerCon, I think, right?
Yeah, we had a panel up there. It was me and Meg and a couple others. And one
Big
kid,
boy.
Yeah. And
and I think Anthony was with you too.
Yeah, Anthony. That guy's a solid guy, really good guy.
Oh, really good guy.
But everyone in that shoot was I think it was a great summer adventure for everyone. We defied the odds and actually made that film.
You know, real quick about. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're right. That's great.
Real quick about Big Boy, Richard Sponder. I had him on the podcast a few years ago, and it's funny. I'm telling you, I had like this transformation of how this film just has grown and love, and it's just he was originally upset. He was going to be featured in this film, and all his friends went out, to go to this movie on opening day. I think they rented out a theater, or maybe Mattel rented out a theater, and everyone was expecting to see Richard, the contest winner, in this Masters of the Universe film. And no, he didn't appear in the diner, and we all know why, right? Because this happened very late. But they made him into Pig Boy. It came, it went, everyone missed it, and they're like, where were you? We didn't see you. You weren't in this movie. And he was so upset. But fast forward to now as an adult, it's the best thing that's ever happened to him. Because he's become like this iconic. Who cares about being diner customer number 2, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
that's what it would have been. The camera would have went by him, and that would have been it, right?
Yeah, but now he became immortalized as this character Pig Boy that actually has even reappeared in this new Netflix animated series, Masters of the Universe Revelation.
He's immortalized.
He's immortalized, and now his worst nightmare became his dream come true, and he holds it like proudly, like a badge of honor, and it's amazing that you guys got away with that, because he told me he had to put on a life mask, and you're putting the straws through the nose to breathe, and then at that age it's claustrophobic for an adult. Imagine doing that to a child. But he just so happy and went down that way.
Yeah, well, you obviously know what happened. I mean, the schedule got pushed, and Mattel comes in, and we're getting towards the final weeks, but we have to put this boy in. He won the contest. I said, well, we're not on Earth anymore. We're done shooting all that. We're in Eternia. We'll put him in Eternia. Okay, so.
And it turned out to be wonderful. It is a blink and a blink you can miss it moment, but now with DVDs, right, and freeze framing and putting the pictures on the internet, now people want action. They've made custom action figures of Pig Boy. We're waiting for an official one, but everyone loves that Pig Boy character and the story behind it, which is just so fantastic.
That was great.
And you mentioned Wizard of Oz. I love the fact that this movie is like a reverse Wizard of Oz, where Julie is actually Dorothy, so to speak. I thought that was pretty creative. A lot of people just love that idea. I have to ask you, as real quick, as a musician, look, my favorite scene. I want to know your favorite scene in that movie, but my favorite scene is the battle in the instrument store, right? But the amount, was it heartbreaking as a musician to see all of those keyboards and amplifiers and guitars destroyed in that scene? Yes, it had to be, right?
Yes, it was.
I mean, that must have took a big chunk of the budget.
Remarkably not. It's so funny, things relative, right? Remarkably, no. Compared to other things, that was relatively small. But it was. They had to buy everything that we destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love the scene. I love the suspense building as you pull the camera away from He-Man and Duncan, Man-at-Arms, that are hiding behind the wall, waiting for the battle to come.
Well, I think a couple of my favorite scenes. First of all, my favorite scene, because it's a total trip. Now I'm going to give it away. Some people may know because I mentioned it. I mean, I don't know if you know. Are you a comics guy too? But the artist John. Oh God, it'll come in a minute. He actually saw the movie, and some people were complaining about it. And he goes, "You guys are missing the point. Whoever did this, the cosmic key is the boom tube, and so and so's your dark side. I mean, and so and so's this." And I was like, "Okay, this guy's he's on the right track." He put it in his letters page, and I wrote him. I said, I'm the director, and you're right on the money. So the last scene, by the way, I just wish to God they'd let me do this because it means so much more today. But I'm on record way back, pre all these Marvel movies. I knew Jack Kirby really well. When Jack moved to Thousand Oaks, I went to, just like I did with Disney, I found out he lived near Valencia, called up, got his wife. His wife said, sure, so come over for sandwiches. Jack, I'd love to meet you. Went over, met him, became friends with Jack Kirby. Learned so much from Jack. In fact, not even knowing back in those days, I'm in college, I'm going to direct Masters of the Universe one day. He said, he talked about villains. He says, well, Gary, listen, the first thing you got to know is, it's a New York Jewish guy, just, you can't believe that this little guy, that out of his hands and mind comes these whirls, and he goes, got to remember, the bad guy always has to be more powerful than the hero. Otherwise, there's no hero. You don't have a hero if the villain is not more powerful. He has to be the most powerful guy, and the hero has to find something in him that makes him to be able to defeat him. And that was in my mind the whole time I was in Masters of the Universe, like branded in me, that Skeletor must be more powerful in his way. He must feel he's got the control. And you can see the echoes of Doctor Doom and Darkseid and all that stuff, and the boom tube and all that stuff. Yeah, it's all, So the whole idea of this transition from one world to another, the fish out of water, was the thing that we had to keep from a budget standpoint. But in a way, it made for a more interesting movie, maybe. I would have loved to make the movie of Eternia on a scale of Lord of the Rings. But that's a different movie, and that's a different budget,
right.
Completely, So I think in terms of the mythology, I think it was great. But, I did have an idea. The second movie was going to pick up in Eternia, and I was already thinking, how can we do that for a bit of a budget? And so I had written up a treatment for, it was called I, Skeletor, the rise of Snake Mountain. And I was going to go, there's a little, in terms of which part of He-Man's history you read, I'm talking about the toy line now and the animated and all that stuff. It's all, everything's a little different, but he linked up with the Snake Man first, right? And so I thought we last saw him in that bubbling underground river. What if that underground river, brought him to the Snake Men, who actually are going to kill him, okay? But he winds up being their leader. That's the kind of the thread of that. While we'd also be going to Eternia and what's going on at Grayskull and all the good guys. But I like this idea of telling the story once again, kind of from Skeletor's perspective, but with him not being all powerful when we meet him. He's now helpless with the Snake Man, but he winds his way into him, and he winds up being their leader.
I love that idea for a Masters of the Universe too. Much more than there was some other idea that was floating around where Skeletor would be on Earth again as some evil business tycoon, and Dolph or He-Man would be incognito as a football player, I think.
Yeah. That's the movie I did not want to make. I don't mean that one, but that kind of movie is just like, what? Who's this movie for? It's not for the fans. It's not for the general audience. Who's the audience for this? I don't get it.
Masters of the Universe in name only, right?
Yeah.
And you're speaking about that treatment. Oh, you ever think of approaching Mattel and say, hey, can we do this as a comic? We know we can't do this as a movie, but.
Well, I never finished the screenplay. I think I did about the first 10 or 12 pages, but I did a treatment that kind of gave how Skeletor would. I think it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Seeing Skeletor being kicked and beat up and just treated like crap by the Snake Men, as he has to regain who he is and has to regain his. To me, that's an interesting journey, because you don't see that, and you're not even saying it was a backstory originally. No, you're saying this is that moment from when in our movie where he got defeated and now he's down to the bottom, and then the opposing. Well, anyway, that's a whole nother story for another day. But I thought that would be interesting to see him having to, humble himself before the leader of the Snake Men. Always though, in the back of his mind, I'm gonna rule this place. You're gonna be out, and he's still got that, of course, even though he's been beaten down.
That's scheming, right?
Yeah.
Gary, people would love that. They did that, I think, with Batman. They did some sort of sequel in the Michael Keaton universe in comics, a script that was never produced. And I think I mean, we're getting a lot of Masters of the Universe comics. I think people would go crazy about it if you were interested in doing that. I know the fandom would go nuts just to see what that would be about. And
I just think it's a great idea when you can take a character and turn it on its head, and he'll wind up being I shouldn't say that. He is always the Skeletor that he is, but you would see him in a different way where he is not in control, in quite the opposite. He's being treated like, I compare it to the cowboy and Indian movies where the white guy that gets taken in and the Indians, and they train him, and then he winds up being one of them and becoming very good at what he does. And the only thing in this case is, instead of becoming a hero, he's still that villain he's always been. So he's like, the Snake Men got the wrong guy, but they don't know it.
I would love that. Gary, you must have seen, after so many stops and starts that they're finally doing production. They're in or finished filming a new Masters of the Universe movie with Amazon, MGM, and Mattel Films, directed by Travis Knight. Yeah. And that budget is $200 million budget. That's what Variety said.
Unbelievable.
And then Dolph confirmed that budget as well. Dolph, apparently, it's the biggest secret that everyone knows, that it looks like he's going to have a role in that film. Every time he's been asked, he's never denied it. And during filming in London, he went on Facebook and he said he's filming a role for a secret project, and I'm in London and I'm being fitted for a wig. And, it was easy to put 2 to 2 together that, they're filming Masters of the Universe in London right now. And it would seem like natural to ask the He-Man of your film to play, maybe a King Grayskull or some sort of ancient character, in the new film. It seems logical for Hollywood to do that, right?
Very random or very randor, depending upon how you pronounce it.
Yeah. So, and I think if anything, I mean, are you excited about it? I think if anything, it at least is also going to bring more eyes to your film, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm trying not to, I never prejudge anything till it's made, but I have read the bits and pieces like you of the Earth is involved again somehow, present day Earth. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm not sure why, if they had a $200 million budget, they even tied it to Earth. They could have made the Eternian Lord of the Rings if they wanted, for that kind of money. But hopefully they got a really good take, and I want it to be successful, believe me.
Yeah, because it carries on the franchise. Look, the one thing that this has done, I think, and is doing something in fantasy genre. Sword and sorcery, that kind of thing. It's immortality. It's a little piece of immortality. I was talking. Who was I talking to with this? A few people, but in regards to it's like Christmas songs, right? Where Christmas songs, you'll hear these artists from the 50s and the 40s, and they'll come on the radio, right? Where all their other music is forgotten. But if they did, chestnuts roasting on an open fire, you're going to hear that recording. And same thing with like genre films, so like the black and white King Kong film and all the King Kongs and all the Godzillas and Flash Gordon. These things live on, and much further than the best pictures of the 50s and the 60s, minus a few, right? But like It's a Wonderful Life, right? I mean, Jimmy Stewart, the rest of his movies are probably going to be forgotten at some point. But it seems like It's a Wonderful Life is a Christmas staple. And that's the one that even the young children watch today, with their parents. I think this movie is just like a little piece of immortality for you,
It feels that way because so many of when I do hear from people, it's a father who has watched the movie 8 times now with his son because he saw it when he was a kid. And so I think we're coming up pretty close to the grandfather generation, the grandfather and the father of the grandson. Not to reveal my own age, but I mean, that's where it's at. But so I think it's a good point you make, and I love it. I've said to some of my friends from time to time when it comes up, I said, guys, I think my movie's more popular now than it was when it opened. So that's a plus,
That's a wonderful plus, and I can only hope one day the state of sort of sorcery fantasy today, it could come back at some point and have some renaissance. You never know. You mentioned Tarzan at the beginning. It seems like Tarzan had its time and it's kind of left. And Westerns, well, they did have a little renaissance, I think, with Tombstone and Wyatt Earp and Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood.
Unforgiven was that was a great movie, man. What I loved about that was how Clint used his actual history as an actor, being a young cowboy. He was. We think of him. Yeah, we think of him as Dirty Harry, but we mainly think of him in Rawhide, and then For the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and all those movies.
The Man with No Name.
Yeah. So for him to be this aging gunfighter, he found a movie and a role that brought all that what you'd normally consider baggage right into who that guy was. Right. You that guy's that guy. That is a guy who killed a lot of people with a gun. Knows how to use it, but now he's in his senior years. I mean, that was just a brilliant movie and brilliantly directed. Gene Hackman was everybody was on their game in that movie.
Yeah. Let me see. Anything before we just wrap this up real quick? Oh, the Sword of Grayskull, real quick. Are there any mechanics behind that? I mean, does that give He-Man power? It was never, you saw Blade, he coveted. Like I said, you could tell he was mesmerized by that sword, And then when
I think we were treating the sword as a mythic thing that, in my mind, amplified whatever the powers of the wielder had. So it wasn't a magic sword in the sense that you suddenly have supernatural abilities, but because it really wasn't. No one ever really defined it. So our sense was in the movie, the thread was that it would empower in the holder an enhancement and an amplification of that person's qualities. So theoretically, if Skeletor was to get a hold of it, it might actually amplify all his bad stuff. Then you get into the questions of who can hold that sword. Can anyone hold that sword? Well, we never answered that one, to be honest, but I guess we hinted at it with Blade.
Yeah.
That someone could. So I think that's as far as we went with it because, it was, Excalibur-like, I guess, to some degree, not a sword with power in and of itself, but a sword that would amplify the strengths of the person wielding it.
Mm. Another quick question, two left. Another quick question that a lot of fans ask is, they were always asking about movie extras, and they're saying, how come there's not extras? And I'm like, there's extras at the diner, the context, right? Where extras, you had them shave their head. The people at why do I keep saying music stores? Charlie's. They had some extras in front, but I guess people always wonder, when that big invasion happened at night down the street, was there any shots of like someone coming out going, oh my God, and
there were, we intended to have a couple of those. Yes. And by the time we got to that part of the movie, there was no money left. So
that's what I thought.
At one point we were thinking, well, can we split the army in half and just have people in their street clothes and stuff like that? And we actually considered that. I said, well, if we could get it all in one night, we could do that, but I'm not sure we can get it all in one night. And if we don't get it all in one night, I don't know if we're going to get another night where we can do that. So there were all those on the spot calls. And I guess it was one of like, I know it sounds stupid. Well, maybe no one will notice if we just move it along fast enough. We had a great picture. There was one, I think this was a David Odell from his script. I always liked it. We didn't get to shoot it. It was a little cliche because I think we've seen versions of that, but still, I would like to have gotten this one. It was a kid in his room waking up, seeing that with his He-Man figures out. And so, he looks at them and he looks at that and he looks at them. Yeah. And I guess it's funny. People say, well, if you could do a new cut and do anything else, what would you do? And that's the one thing I say. I think I would try and add a few people. It was impossible, but today with CGI, we probably could add some people in the street running away and screaming, and we could definitely shoot that scene with the kid and the toys. I really, if you want to talk about a shot that I wish I got, and I'm paying tribute to David Odell, that was his. It was his thing. I would have got that one. But you understand, that's a whole setup. You gotta get the crew in there. You got the kid in there. You got the toys. It's just So it was one of those ones. But if I go back, there's 3 or 4 things that I would have got. That's one of them I would have got.
And finally, She-Ra. So many She-Ra fans. I know it was originally in the script. Actually, she was going to be in the beginning and then like join them at the end of the
Yeah.
battle. I think.
Well, because that came up, that was not in the script, and that was
Oh,
never in the script. And then, no, I did do a draft with that
yeah. I
because
thought I saw one.
the Mattel guys were pushing it,
Yeah.
and I did that draft to show them why we couldn't do it. I went to them, I said, guys, we're introducing He-Man, not He-Man and his sister, and we already have He-Man, and we already have Man-at-Arms, and we already have, we got all these characters, and she's a major character. So if you introduce her, you can't just introduce her in a cameo. I mean, we could, but then you're not really, is she going to go to Earth with them or not? And so I did write a draft that showed them what it could be, where she's in the opening and basically in the closing. So we basically, when we go to Eternia. So she couldn't come. I said she can't come to Earth with them because then are we building He-Man up here or are we building She-Ra? It's got to be one of their movies, not both of them.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to do. And that's not even including the budget factor. Now you got another star you got to hire, you got to pay. It was a whole thing. So
it doesn't mean she doesn't exist.
Right. That was my whole point. But the fans don't exist. Orko exists. It all exists back there in Eternia. But we use the conventional fact that only this group got to Earth. So therefore, that's who we know. We're not saying that Orko and Battle Cat don't exist. They're just not here.
That's a great point. And He-Man could have been Prince Adam prior to.
Yeah.
Gary, I know I've kept you. I think I'm overdue here. Before we close this out, do you have anything else you'd like to, touch upon or add that we haven't addressed, before we sign this off?
No, I think you covered quite a bit. Trying to think if there's anything else.
I could talk to you for another hour, but I want to keep you. There's so much. The musical score. I mean, Bill Conti,
And the one thing I contributed the little melody of the thing with him.
Cosmic Key.
Yeah,
you did that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I went over and I said, "This is kind of what I'm hearing for this theme," and he's great. He went, "Good, I love it. Let me see what I can do with that." And
yeah,
you can see what he did with it.
Yeah, I love how that little series of notes was incorporated into the score. It became one of the film's themes, right?
Yep. Oh, that's interesting. That little cosmic key.
Mm-hmm.
I basically came up with what I wanted, and I did I wish I had that sketch, the one I gave to what's his name? I can't believe I forgot his name. He came from ILM too. He was a mechanical guy. He's the one who figured out how to make that work. Now imagine I told him what I wanted. I wanted to have this column, and I wanted these things to come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that they would turn, and these things would turn independently up. I mean, everything was turning on that. All these things, and then the things, the opticals would appear above it. And he goes, "Okay, so you want this to spin, you want this to spin, you want these arms to come out, and they spin, these spin on top." And he goes, "Yeah, okay, let me see how I can work that." He worked it out. And I had no idea what I was asking for when I was describing all that. But when you look at that and you look at all the moving parts that move independently, it's crazy. And he did it. And I know his name. I'm just forgetting it right now. But the guy was a genius, complete genius.
No, it was impressive, completely.
Yeah.
And how was that powered?
There's a cable that went off. You never saw the cable. You never saw the cable. And then we had the stunt versions, which were made of foam core, so they could take the falls and stuff like that. And but we had two beauty units that were made for the camera, and we had a third one that wasn't quite as polished as them, but could be used in long shots if we needed to and stuff like that. And it was a mechanical feat to create that.
Didn't we hear your voice in the movie too? What was that line? The moon rises to its apex. Right?
Yeah, because I was in there with, we had one of the greatest editors in the world on that thing. And Ann Coates,
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia, The Elephant Man. I mean, come on, she's like a legend, and she was great, fantastic to work with, very supportive, but also good to challenge me, and we would challenge each other on things. Yeah, one of the editing room stories. I had my great moment. I We were shooting at nights, and when the sun comes up, the sun comes up, and we're trying to get that whole sequence done over a night or two of where Dolph flies into the city, banks around, and Meg is there with the cosmic key. He fires the thing from Wheeler, which grabs it, pulls it, flies back off at his disc. Meg says, "No, whatever, and it was storyboarded, and forget that. It was so tough to get all these shots. It was just impossible. So I'm out there going, okay, I need an establishing shot. This is with the effects guys from Boss. We got to have a shot of him coming through there. We need that shot. And that just means that's it's a blank plate, but it's moving. He's going to be in there. They're going to add that later. Then we have to have a shot of him actually with a medium shot tight on him coming around the corner on one of those trucks with him. And then we got to give him the unit. He's got to have a camera angle where we pick him up and he goes, and he shoots right past camera. And then we have to have the shot where the thing grabs the thing and pulls it off. We have to have Meg shot and go, So I only got the number of shots to make that work. And it was much more elaborate. But in my head, I was pretty sure I had everything covered. And I got a panic call from Ann. Coach, Gary, you have to get this shot and that shot. No, I think it'll work. I think we got. No, it's not working. I've tried to cut it together. I said, well, in my head it's cut together. So let me come down there. So we drove down from Whittier to the editing room at Canon, and I go in there with her, and she shows me the sequence, and I said, no, you're out of sequence. I am not out of. She's British. I am not out of sequence. Well, you're out of sequence from what I shot. You might be on sequence of the script and just missing segments, but I think I shot it so it'll work. It won't work. I said, well, try this. Put that shot here, put this shot there, put that shot there, move this one. I did a shot that you don't have. It went like this. Do that. Boom, 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 boom. And I think this will work. She goes, it's not going to work. You're going to shoot more. I said, well, can we just try it? And so I left her alone for 40 minutes and went and got a cup of coffee or something. And I came back. I go, how's it look? She goes, it works. Academy Award-winning editor. That was my moment. I chose this moment. But it's not her fault. It's because I veered from the script and I shot exactly what I thought I needed to just barely pull that off. So if you watch that sequence, you know now again, that was every shot we had. There wasn't an extra shot. There was nothing else to go to. It had to work, but it did.
That's what I learned about directing. I mean, I've never been a director, but I heard a lot of it is just.
But I was afraid. She's an Academy Award. I loved her. We got along great. I respected her so much, and she'd never said to me before, "We don't have the shots for this sequence." I was like, "Oh fuck, we're like shit." And then she showed me, and I said, "No, I think you got it out of order. No, that's in order." I said, "It might be in order for the script, but it's not in order for the way I decided to shoot it because we're running out of sunlight. We're running out of nighttime." And so when I came back, just this quiet, it works.
Gary, we want to thank you for being on today. Thank you. It's just been an extreme honor and pleasure to have you on, to listen to all your tales and to talk Masters of the Universe. Your film has brought so much fun and enjoyment for fans for over 3 decades now. And we're just extremely grateful. So
yeah, I'm grateful to the fans, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity. I mean, it was a lot of fun making a movie. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of stress, but I think in the end, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm really happy that there are so many people that appreciate the film.
Yes, definitely. All right, so that's it, everyone. Again, thank you very much, Gary, and
thank you.
We'd like to thank everyone for listening, and let the power return. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.